All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. So today I want to show you how to make a molded bowl. So the items that you're gonna need are a slab that's the 1/4 inch thick. You're gonna need a mold. Now these are really these are really heavy, so be careful. And apparently I can't, it's okay. And you're gonna need a banding wheel. So I've got that, and then you're just gonna need your tool set because you're gonna need like your needle tool and the little pencil tool and stuff like that. So I have this slab already rolled out. Once you start this process, you need to finish it in one day, okay? You cannot leave the clay on the mold overnight. So I'm gonna take this slab and I'm gonna lay it over the top of my mold, and I put my mold on top of my banding wheel, and I tried to make sure that it was like centered, that it's gonna spin easy, and that it's kind of in the middle. And I'm gonna push the clay so that it's nice and flat and matches this flat part on here. Now I want this whole slab to match this mold. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start to kind of compress the clay against the mold. So I'm just using my fingers to push on it, and I'm compressing the clay, and I'm just doing just a little ring right around the very base. So we're just gonna go little bits at a time, and we're gonna go like, we'll do one ring, and then we'll go a little bit lower, like just a little bit. Okay, the main thing is to go little bits at a time. You'll also notice that like I'm trying to avoid having these major folds in here. So as I'm going around, I'm just gently lifting these. And I'm not trying to pull it off of the mold. I'm not trying to like make it move a lot. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not making the fold go even more foldy. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going around and around. So each time I go around, I go a little bit lower. If it's kind of like moving a little bit, then I'll stay on that same section just a little bit longer. But you're gonna keep kind of going down. Now, the lower you get, then the more compressing, like the more squeezing it together you're gonna need to do. So what I do for that is I'll kind of flatten an area out, and then I'll take my hands and I'll lay them together and kind of squeeze that clay a little bit tighter. So it's kind of like, I think of it as making the clay a little bit thicker right there. But I gotta get this kind of flat. I don't wanna pull it way up, but I'm just having my fingers just gently rest on here so I can make it a little bit flat, and then squeezing my fingers together, real gentle. Okay, so I'm gonna make it flat. I'm gonna squeeze it together. I'm gonna make it flat, squeeze it together. Now, if it pops up a little bit over on the other side, especially when you're very first doing this, not even a big deal, okay? So as you're kind of going around, like you're gonna make it match and compress a little bit more each time you go around. So as you're going around, the first time it might pop up, but then the next time it won't. Right, so you're just gonna kind of keep going around and make sure it's kind of getting flat. You don't want to fold the clay over. You want to change the shape of the clay instead of like folding it into something. And if you have some little funky spots at the end, not even a big deal, okay? Because we're just gonna trim that off anyway. So you're gonna kind of lift it up just a little bit, make it flat, compress it together, And you'll notice I'm standing. This is not something that you want to do sitting down, or at least it's just, it's harder if you're sitting down. It's more difficult to do because like you can't get to this side. I'm not working on the side towards me because this motion is really like uncomfortable. I work on the far side because this is easy to do, whereas like this would hurt my wrists and it makes me like do weird stuff. So don't want to do that. All right, so you're gonna keep going around until you get all the way to the bottom. You're gonna get to a point where there's gonna be little funky stuff hanging off all over the sides and everything. That's okay, just keep going. If you have some small little tears right at the very edge, that's fine. If they come all the way up here, you're gonna wanna start over again, okay? But if they're just little ones, then at the very edge, it's okay. All right, so I'm gonna keep on going all the way around. Now that I've gotten to the bottom, I can kind of like push the clay over the edge a little bit because I'm just gonna trim that off in a little bit, okay? So now that I have this, I want to spend a bunch of time blending, okay? Like right now, especially since I was wearing my ring, I've left a whole bunch of marks on here. So when you do smooth this and blend, make sure you start at the base and go up. If you try to go down, if you have any funky spots in your slab, you're gonna end up tearing through it and then you'll have to start over again. So just make sure if you're smoothing, that you're smoothing from the base, like from down here towards the top, or at least how it is right now. So you're just gonna spend some time smoothing. This does a couple things. A, it makes your project look like extra fabulous, and who doesn't want an extra fabulous project? But it also lets you feel if there's any air bubbles that you need to like, you know, fix and make sure that like the clay is actually matching. But it also kind of helps to pull a little bit of the moisture out, and you can start to feel the change in the clay itself and how stiff the clay is, okay? So, because to take this off of the mold, you have to get this off of the mold today. If you leave it overnight, it's gonna dry out too much because the plaster in the mold is gonna really suck out all the water, and clay shrinks as it dries, and clay is not as strong as this mold right now. So your project would literally just crack. It would just split down the side, no more project, okay? So it's really important that you are taking this off the same day. So you're gonna spend a bunch of time smoothing. Then while it's still on here, like once you've smoothed a bunch, use your little pencil tool or literally a pencil, hold it fairly flat. Like when you're doing this, you wanna hold it kind of flat against the edge, not up and down against the edge. And if you hold it flat, you can carve your name in there and you'll have fewer clay boogies than if you did it the other way. And notice how I'm turning my pencil. So I'm always like carving to get the least amount of clay boogies. All right, so I've added my name on. Now I would want to smooth this, but I want to make this video not, I mean, it's already long enough. I don't need it to be any longer. So I already have another one that I made earlier. So you're gonna spend most of the period smoothing this. Now this one is made out of marbled clay, and if you take advance, like, fabulous. I'll show you how to do this. So I have a bunch of like hangy bits on the end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my needle tool, and I'm just gonna like trim off all the junk, okay? Now yours is just gonna be regular clay if you're in intro. If you're in advanced and you do have this marbled clay, save all your scraps, but absolutely do not let these scraps get into our regular clay, okay? It's really important. So I just kind of had my needle tool set up against the mold, and I just trimmed off the edge, okay? So just to get that kind of junk off. Now you want to check and make sure that like your mold is really centered on here. So when you spin it, like it's spinning evenly. If it's off to the side, then it doesn't spin well, okay? So you want to make sure it's nice and centered. And now we got to trim this edge. So this is going to be the lip of our bowl. So we want it to be really nice, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to trim off any funky spots that are down at the bottom. If you do have any cracking or any folds, or just, you know, if it comes up a little high or something like that, whatever your funky spot is, you're going to trim above it. What I do is I'm going to use my pinky to hook underneath the banding wheel or the mold, and I am gonna hold my needle tool and I'm gonna spin the banding wheel, and I'm gonna make a mark on there to make sure that it's nice and even. Now when I'm doing this, let's see, I want to make sure that my needle tool is held like this and not like this, against the side of the mold, okay? Most of these molds, well, literally I made every single one of them. And I wanted to have enough of these for every single person in class to do it all at the same time. So I brought in some of my personal molds from home. And if you stab it and rip it, you're gonna break the mold. Like, you're gonna add in stripes to the mold, and I would appreciate you taking better care of my personal items. So like I said, hook the pinky underneath, hold the needle tool steady, and so it's kind of flat. So not like sticking straight out, but kind of like at an angle here. And I'm gonna gently spin this, and I'm gonna check it and make sure that it's nice and even. And when I get back around and I touch the line again, I know that I did it. So now I'm gonna keep cutting, but I'm gonna trim just like a little bit each time. So I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm just doing a little bit at a time, and I'm gonna keep going around till I get all the way through. Now you'll be able to feel the difference in when you're touching the mold and when you're touching the clay. Okay, once you start feeling the mold and you feel the mold all the way around, then you know you have cut it off all the way through, okay? Now, and like I said, it's okay if you feel the mold with your needle tool, as long as you're holding your tool kind of flat like I am, then it is okay. Then it's not gonna ruin the mold if you do that. Okay, so now once I have it cut all the way through, I'm gonna take this little extra edge off. And you can see I have this like nice clean edge. I just want to super gently with my finger, just very gently roll this edge a little bit. I don't want to make it flat. If I make it pointy and flat, I won't be able to get this off. So really I'm keeping my finger underneath this edge and then just barely rolling the edge. Okay, so I'm just smoothing out just that edge. So now, since this has been like basically this one spent the whole period being smooth, now it's time for me to take it off. So usually I'll kind of hook my fingers underneath the lip, and I'll have my thumb up here, and I'll use one hand kind of for supporting, and then I just gently push up. Now it's gonna, like the first few billion times you do it, nothing's gonna happen, and you're gonna be like, but Ms. E, this won't come off. And you'll get to a certain spot where all of a sudden you'll feel it kind of give a little bit, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. So once you get it loosened up, so you can feel it moving all the way around, then you're gonna pick it up, flip it over, and just set it back down on here. And now I can smooth this edge. Make sure you support from the outside so you don't warp the shape. Okay. Now the biggest thing with these ones is you don't want to warp the shape. You don't want to squish it because you don't want this to go wobbly. Clay has a memory, and it will literally remember that, and it'll look fine, and then in the kiln it'll go. So when you pick these up, pick it up gently from the bottom so you don't change the shape of the rim, okay? Now I'm gonna bring this one over just cause. See, look how fabulous that looks. Look at how fabulous that looks. If you take advanced, you can learn how to do this. And the bowl that you're making right now is gonna look amazing as well. So thanks everybody, have fun, make fabulous projects, and I'll see you next time.